My name is Ethan Walker, and before I tell you what happened, I need you to promise yourself something. If your town has a place that every local avoids, a place nobody can explain without lowering their voice, do not go there just because you're curious. That's exactly why my friends and I went. And they're all dead now. I grew up in a small town surrounded by farmland and woodland. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. People left their doors unlocked. Everyone knew each other. And the biggest news was usually somebody crashing into a fence after drinking too much at the pub. But behind the town sat an old graveyard. Nobody visited it. Nobody maintained it. Nobody even talked about it unless they had to. The strange thing was that it wasn't abandoned. The gates were always locked, yet fresh flowers sometimes appeared on graves. The grass was always trimmed even though nobody ever saw a groundskeeper. And every few years someone would disappear after going there. Officially, those disappearances had explanations. Runaways, accidents, mental health issues. That's what the police reports said. The locals believed something else. I didn't. Neither did my friends. That summer, there were 5 of us. Me, Jake, Ryan, Lewis, and Connor. We were 19, stupid, and convinced nothing could scare us. One Friday night we decided to sneak into the graveyard. It was nearly midnight when we parked near an abandoned farm and walked the remaining distance. The air felt unusually cold. Not winter cold. The kind of cold you feel in a basement that hasn't been opened for years. Our footsteps crunched across gravel while distant dogs barked somewhere in town. Everything else was silent. No wind. No insects. Nothing. When the graveyard finally appeared through the darkness, my stomach tightened. The place looked wrong. Not haunted. Not supernatural. Just wrong. The gravestones were arranged in unusually perfect rows. Every stone faced exactly the same direction. Even the oldest graves looked strangely clean, as if somebody had been taking care of them recently. Connor climbed the gate first. The rest of us followed. The moment my boots touched the ground inside, I heard something. Breathing. Very faint. Very close. I spun around. Nothing. The others laughed when I mentioned it. I laughed too, but I kept hearing it. Slow breathing. As though somebody was standing just behind me. We switched on our torches and started exploring. The graveyard was larger than it looked from outside. Far larger. Rows of graves stretched into darkness. Some dated back over 100 years. Others seemed surprisingly recent. That's when Ryan noticed something strange. One of the newer gravestones had no name. Just a date. 3 days earlier. We gathered around it. The soil looked freshly disturbed. Jake joked that somebody had forgotten to finish the engraving. Then Lewis pointed his torch at the next grave. That one had no name either. So did the next. And the next. Dozens of them. Fresh graves. No names. No information. Just dates. Recent dates. The oldest was only 6 months old. Nobody laughed after that. A feeling settled over us. The feeling that we weren't supposed to be there. Then Connor found the caretaker's building. It sat near the back wall, partially hidden by trees. A small brick structure with a single wooden door. The padlock hanging from the handle looked brand new. Ryan smashed it with a rock. The door opened. Inside was a tiny office. Dust covered everything except the desk. The desk was spotless, as though somebody had been using it earlier that day. There were files stacked neatly across the surface. Connor opened the top one. Then he stopped smiling. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Pictures of people around town. Shop owners. Teachers. Drivers. Parents. Children. The photographs were organized into folders. Each folder contained notes. Addresses. Work schedules. Family members. Daily routines. The person who kept these files knew everything about everyone. My hands began shaking. This wasn't some ghost story. Somebody had been watching the entire town. For years. Then Jake found another folder. His own. There were photographs of him leaving school. Walking home. Sitting in his garden. Sleeping through his bedroom window. The newest picture had been taken 2 days earlier. None of us spoke. We simply stared. Then we heard footsteps outside. The footsteps stopped directly outside the building. Nobody moved. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then came a knock. 3 calm knocks. The door slowly opened. A man stood there. He looked about 60. Gray hair. Clean clothes. Polished shoes. He carried a lantern. Nothing about him looked threatening. That made him terrifying. He looked at us the way a teacher might look at students who had entered a room they weren't supposed to enter. He smiled slightly. Then he said, "I was wondering when curiosity would bring some of you here." Nobody answered. The man glanced at the files on the desk, then back at us. "You've made things difficult now." His voice remained calm. Connor stepped forward and demanded to know who he was. The man ignored the question. Instead, he looked directly at Connor and calmly listed his home address, his mother's workplace, and the exact route Connor took every morning. Connor's face turned white. Then the man smiled again. And somehow that smile felt worse than any threat. We ran. Every one of us. We burst from the building and sprinted through the graves. Behind us, we could hear the man walking. Not chasing. Walking. That terrified me more than if he'd run. Because he knew something we didn't. Ryan reached the gate first. Then suddenly stopped. I almost crashed into him. There was a gravestone directly in front of the gate. None of us had seen it earlier. Ryan's torch illuminated the engraving. His name, Ryan Miller. Date of death, tomorrow. Nobody said a word. Lewis turned his torch toward another grave. It had Connor's name, then Jake's, then mine, then his own. Every one of us had a grave, already waiting. The dates were different, but all of them were within the next few days. Connor started screaming. Ryan climbed the gate. The second he reached the top, something hit him from behind. He lost his balance, fell backward, and snapped his neck on a gravestone. The sound still wakes me up. The rest of us ran. Pure panic. Lewis disappeared first. 1 second he was beside me. The next he was gone. Jake vanished shortly after. Then Connor. I never saw what happened to either of them. I only heard breathing behind me the entire time. Eventually I reached the far wall and climbed over. When I hit the ground outside, I ran all the way back to town. I didn't stop until I reached the police station. The police searched the graveyard before sunrise. They found Ryan's body. Nothing else. No caretaker. No building. No files. No graves with our names. Nothing. The investigation concluded Ryan died in an accident. The others were classified as missing persons. Nobody believed my story. Not even my own parents. That was 12 years ago. Last month, I finally returned to town. I wish I hadn't. The graveyard is still there. The gates are still locked. The grass is still perfectly trimmed. But that's not the worst part. The worst part happened when I walked past the caretaker's office. Because the building exists. Exactly where I remembered it. And hanging on the door was a small wooden notice board. Pinned beneath the glass were 4 photographs. Connor, Lewis, Jake, Ryan. Each picture had a date beneath it. The date they died. Then I noticed a 5th photograph. Mine. A recent photograph. Not 12 years old. Recent. Taken sometime this year. Underneath, it was a date. A date 3 weeks from now. As I stood there staring, I heard breathing behind me. Slow and familiar. Then a calm voice spoke beside my ear. The same voice I heard 12 years ago. The caretaker's voice. He said it quietly. "You weren't the survivor, Ethan." My blood turned cold. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The old man smiled. Then he said the one thing I can never forget. "You were simply the last one scheduled." And for the first time in 12 years, I realized my grave had never been predicting my death. It had been recording an appointment.